Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Erba Mannheim's podcast, Let's Talk About Diagnostics. My name is Cecilia, and with me today, I have two of our great product managers, Adam and Annabella. For those of you who don't know Erba, we are a rising player in the in vitro diagnostics market. We work hard to improve patient outcomes in emerging markets by providing labs with full range of diagnostics instruments, reagents, and support services. Our mission is to make automation affordable for labs everywhere. Today is the first of many episodes dedicated to you, our customers. We will cover topics from all of the scientific disciplines that we support with the goal of giving you interesting and enjoyable content relevant to your work in the labs. So, Annabella, could you please introduce the topic of today?
Hello, Cecilia. Thank you so much to let me introduce today's topic. So, as we all know, today is the World Blood Donor Day. For this reason, we will cover topics related to blood donation and all the process related to this treatment of the blood, and of course, talk a little bit about the aim of the use of blood donation. So, regarding this special date, the celebration it takes every year on the 14th of June, and it is celebrated on the birthday of the scientist who discovered the HBO blood group system. This day was basically founded in 2005 by the World Health Assembly with the aim to dedicate this special day to all the blood donors. So also of course with the aim to encourage more people to give blood freely. So as you know, the blood donations are voluntary and they most of the times they are unpaid. It depends of the country that you've done it. And they are essential for the life saving. For this reason, it will ensure also an effective health system.
How will blood donation ensure that?
When we have an health system, because not everywhere we have it, to be effective, it needs to have a blood service. The main purpose is to give to the patients, of course, the access to the safest blood or blood products in quantity sufficient for what need that is coming. If we think that around the world every year millions of people needs blood transfusion, it can be during a surgery, it can be because a car accident, it can be because you have a disease condition that requires blood components. Well, we can understand why the blood donations are really important, and if we think also that there is no substitute for human blood, we can understand that why the health system is effective with the blood service. In the end, is this to give safe blood to the patients we need, and for that we need to ensure that our blood is safe without any disease, and the people will have a good outcome with it.
And Adam, we know you have a scientific background and you worked before in blood banking. Can you tell us more about your experience during this time?
Yes, working in a blood bank was a great time in my early career. We really felt like we had a direct connection with the patients, and we would really do our best to make sure that we could find them the most compatible blood that was available at the time. Obviously, there was a big range of sort of activities we'd do. We'd do some very routine general population screening for pregnant women, all the way through to the extremely important emergency work that we would cover, where we would potentially be delivering up to 50 or 60 bags of blood for a patient during an operation. And when you think of that, that's actually the blood from 50 or 60 individuals going towards the well-being of one person. The range was very variable. We'd had the routine work, like I said, where someone would be coming in for a potential blood transfusion, but they might not need the blood. It might be used as an emergency or as a backup if an operation went slightly wrong, versus some patients who were transfused on a very regular basis. those patients would often develop antibodies over an extended period of time. And that would make their blood harder to match, because we would have to make sure that the blood that we were offering them was negative for the antigens that they reacted to in the past. I mean, this is obviously a very small part of the entire blood donation process. This is just the work that was done right at the end before it goes to the patient that's receiving it. There's a lot of work that goes into the initial collection and not so much marketing, but awareness that the blood donation services have to do to make sure they get that regular intake of new donors. People can only donate blood somewhere between every 8 and 11 weeks. Otherwise, they make themselves anemic by being too generous. So yeah, we have to think about the whole awareness campaigns, and that's what World Blood Donor Day is all about. So yeah, it's a great place to work, and I'm very happy that I had the opportunity to do it.
And what would you say are the rarest blood types?
Well, altogether there's 8 main blood types, and these are the ones that you probably would have heard of in the past, related to the ABO system. So put most simply, if you think of the ABO system as some antigens that live on the surface of the red blood cells, these antigens are like small sugar molecules. And there's A antigens, B antigens, and if you've got both of them, you'll be group AB, which obviously leaves the group O, and group O is the absence of any of those antigens. Yeah, it's a simple enough system, but it's absolutely critical that the blood transfusion matching and cross-matching, as it's known, is done correctly, because it takes about 3 mils of the incorrect blood type to be transfused into a person to cause severe hemolytic disease and potentially death. And so it's a super important part of the testing process, making sure we match up the groups as best we possibly can. You may have heard of the positive and negative part of the blood group type, as you would have heard of A positive or A negative, and that positive or negative relates to the presence or absence of the D antigen. So someone who is A positive has the A antigen and also has the D antigen. The rhesus or D antigen is one of the minor blood groups, and these blood groups have a different reaction pattern when you compare them to the A and the B antigens. Our bodies are pre-sensitized such that we're very ready to react if somebody introduces an A or a B antigen that we haven't got. The other antigens, the Kell and Duffy blood groups and the rhesus blood groups, will create a response quite similar to the vaccinations that people have been getting for COVID-19. When you first see these antigens, your immune system may make a response to them. It's not guaranteed, and that will actually trigger the production of antibodies. And so when we screen the plasma of the patients who are coming in for blood transfusions, we check for the presence of these antibodies, because if a person has been sensitized in the past, then we have to make sure we give them antigen negative blood. Otherwise they're going to have another big reaction in a similar way to they would if they had an ABO incompatibility. Overall, when you look at the distribution of these blood groups across the world, it really does differ. In the Western countries, there's a higher prevalence of the group O blood type, and that moves towards the group B blood groups in Asia. Also, there's a difference in the prevalence of the D antigen. There's a lot more D positive people in Asia. So really interesting, and it's a complicated job, but the most important thing is to obviously do your best and make sure that you match that ABO group as much as you possibly can.
And also, safe blood can be a concern. Why is it so important to supply safe blood?
Blood safety is an absolute paramount concern when you think about the whole process. Doing no harm to your patients is the very first objective for any medical practitioner. And so the concept of introducing blood into a patient that is actually going to hurt them in the long run is a disaster. So in the 70s and 80s, we saw a lot of patients who were completely dependent on blood transfusion, coming down with hepatitis and early cases of HIV when there was no other obvious route of transmission. And that was a real concern to the blood transfusion authorities and the medical community, because we were trying to do the right thing. These donors were giving blood with the best possible intentions. I'm completely unaware that they were infected with hepatitis or HIV. And a lot of these products that were being produced were actually being pooled. And so it would only take one potentially contaminated donation to ruin a very large pool of blood product that would be prepared for patients with haemophilia or other sort of transfusion dependent disorders. So yeah, making sure that your blood supply is safe is a paramount and expensive activity. And it's made even more difficult because the prevalence of the diseases is actually going to be higher in some of the lower income countries. When you look at the prevalence of hepatitis B in the blood donor pool, when you look in high income countries, we're looking at less than 0.01% of all the donations are Hep B positive, but that rises to nearly 3% when you look in the low income sort of countries. So there's a lot of risk there, and these have to be mitigated through local good practice, donor pre-screening, and other activities, because like we said before, it's absolutely essential that we don't cause any harm to our patients through our activities of trying to help them.
How is donated blood normally used?
That's a good question. Blood's obviously a very versatile product. It's made up of cells and plasma and platelets, but after collection, these products can be split up and stored in different conditions to maximize their shelf life, and obviously to make them more useful. Not all patients will need to have potentially a whole blood transfusion. Patients who have a very low platelet count, for example, will have concentrated platelet suspension given to them, and that can be from a single donor or it can be from a pool of donors depending on the particular situation. The precious nature of the blood product is something that's always in the back of the mind, so we want to make sure that it's as effectively used as possible. They've all got different shelf lives, as I mentioned before. So we've got platelet, which have a very short shelf life of only about 7 days. And when you consider that all of the safety testing has to be completed during that period as well, it's a very short shelf life product. And obviously this is a real focus for people who work with platelets, because we need to make sure that they're ordered, transported, and used as effectively as possible. At the other end of the spectrum, we've got plasma. Now, plasma is actually very, very stable and can be frozen and kept for over a year. So that makes it obviously not as rare, because we've got much more of a shelf life that we can work with. And red cells live in the middle. Red cells in your body last for about 120 days, but when we take them out of the body, the donated packs are good for about 30 to 40 days. So once again, it's a case of really understanding the product that you've got so that we can make sure that the lifespan and the potential usefulness is maximized.
Thank you so much, Adam, for your intervention. I just want to add one final question, is that sometimes the blood may not be suitable for transfusions, and in these cases, the patient will benefit of it in other ways. For example, we can talk about areas like the development of treatments and therapies. We can talk about the vaccination, or even the blood is used for research or a training, or to develop tests for a clinical lab. We can talk, for example, the plasma deficients that are used for the reagents that are in use in the clinical lab to detect factors deficiency, and so on. So yeah, the blood can be very useful for research and training. This is something that we are not relating here, and I think is also a benefit in the end of the use of this blood.
Thank you so much for listening to our first episode. If you have any interesting topics in mind that you would like us to cover, please let us know at sales@erbamannheim.com, and we'll make sure to cover it in our future episodes. Thank you so much.